$10,000 for the storage unit, and we're gonna find out if it was worth it. Wow!
People just love to buy abandoned storage units, but it does end both ways. You either become filthy rich or spend the rest of your life regretting your decision. Join us as we have a look at 15 luckiest storage unit finds ever. Number 15. The James Bond car. When a random business owner purchased a storage unit in a blind auction for only $100, he never expected to find something tangible. Perhaps he could sell a few items of clothing, wristwatches, maybe equipment for some money. Unfortunately, he got more than he bargained for, because inside the container was one of the world's legendary vehicles. He opened the unit to find a James Bond Lotus Esprit submarine car featured in the 1977 film The Spy Who Loved Me. The Long Island buyer remained anonymous after the finding. I mean, nobody wants to share the proceeds from this massive sale with anyone. Further research would show that the storage container had previously been owned by a production company that had paid to use it for 10 years. However, after the period lapsed, no one renewed the payment or came to claim its contents. After years of waiting, the company thought to auction it, and at first the buyer did not recognize the car. It had been there so long, he didn't think it was all that valuable. The vehicle was valued at $500,000, and retired Navy SEAL Don Griffin drove the submarine car during underwater filming. Since the car's discovery, it's been exhibited many different times, but remains with its new owner. And that buyer became the luckiest man ever, because first he found a James Bond car, and secondly he has it for a huge sum and could change his fortune. Before now, he was just an average man who had never enjoyed any luxury. Number 14. $7.5 million in cash. The man in the previous entry purchased a fortune for $100, but this bargain hunter went a bit higher. He bought his storage unit for $500, but this was nothing compared to the glory that awaited. Dan Dotson and his wife Laura of the Storage Wars television show told the story of the lucky family. They would explain that it was a regular day outside when the woman approached him offering to tell him a story. She would go on to reveal that her husband had worked for somebody from whom he had bought a storage unit believing that it was actually empty. But after the two people had tried to open the safe unsuccessfully, that's when they hired a third person to do the job. And when they did, they soon realized that it was not empty, but had in fact $7.5 million in cash inside. Things became complicated after news of the money would get out. The actual owner of the money contacted an attorney to claim it. They offered to settle for $600,000 as a reward for finding the cash. The new owners declined the offer, asking for more, and they would later settle for $1.2 million, after which $6.3 million was returned. Dan didn't disclose these lucky buyers' identities because they had pled anonymity. The television stars had asked their followers what they would do with the money if they found such an amount hidden somewhere, and shared their diverse opinions, and the argument went on for quite a while. But what about you? If you had discovered such a vast fortune, would you raise the alarm? Or would you keep it a secret? And what would you do with the money? Let me know about it in the comments down below. Number 13. Michael Jackson's tracks. It's truly heartbreaking to hear that most of what we thought were Michael Jackson's best music could have been your least favorite if he had released every song that he had written. Joe Jackson, Michael's father, had preserved some of his son's unreleased music and song lyrics in a storage container containing around 250 to 300 works. None of them have been made public to date, and reports say that his father missed payment for the space containing the tracks and photos, which meant that the contract had been terminated and the content was then put up for auction. Howard Mann, a Canadian businessman, and his partner Henry Vaccaro took possession of the items. In 2014, a news article would report that some of Jackson's memorabilia that was linked to the unit would be sold at auction. The contents included 56 mastered reel-to-reel tapes of the Jackson 5. Copyrights were intact, so buyers could not make any copies for sale to the public, as it could result in a lawsuit. This is a warning to everyone who's watching this. If you find any of Michael Jackson's tracks in a storage unit, don't simply assume that you can sell them online. You'll have to answer to the court. You may wonder why a notable person like Jackson would store his precious items in a storage space, and everyone else wishes that they had the answers as well. Number 12. ID Theft Operation. For Brandon Michael, he didn't want very much. He had a Craigslist and eBay to help him sell the things that he would find in storage spaces. The excited young man rolled up to the unit door that he had purchased in Denver on New Year's Day, but that excitement gradually fizzled out. He would find boxes, cabinets, trash bags, all full of hundreds of U.S. passports, birth certificates, driver's license, and many other important personal documents. But here's where it gets even more messy. They were all stolen. In fact, he had found St. Anthony Central Hospital records that contained patient details that were admitted into general surgery or the emergency room. He also found a lot of drug paraphernalia, pills, and even a printer that was used to fabricate fake documents. He felt guilty, knowing that the people who had owned all of those items had been taken advantage of. He then immediately phoned the police and handed the items over to them. Sergeant Ryan McGinty of the Denver Police Check Fraud and Forgery Unit was in charge of the investigation. Police were initially reluctant about the case and asked him to trash them, but when he detailed the content of the findings, that's when they paid more attention. Investigators would reveal that Paul Simmons had rented the storage unit but was later convicted in Florida for grand theft, burglary, and dealing with stolen property. Some of the people who had been taken advantage of included Richard and Sheila Vera, who teared up upon seeing their birth certificates, social security cards, and passports. They thought that they would never see those documents again. They would narrate how someone had broken into their home in 2008 and stole their valuables, which included the documents. They may have moved on, but the discovery opened up brand new wounds. Number 11. Gold and silver coins. A San Jose man had been a fan of treasure hunting and hoped that one day he would be lucky. He didn't know what luck would come his way earlier than he had imagined. He reportedly paid $1,100 for a storage unit, only to see his investment turn into a gold mine. He found some rare coins inside a blue Rubbermaid container. The find in Contra Costa County was so unexpected that engineers were left shocked. There were no cameras at the site of the finding to reveal the actual worth of the gold, and after discovering it in the container, the man agreed to sell it. The buyer wanted to remain anonymous as he did not want attention from the media. Storage auctions are becoming commonplace these days. They're the talking point for shows like Auction Hunters and Storage Wars. American Auctioneers, an organization that spearheads these sales, often lets out notices for containers that go up for sale. After the announcement, bidding then begins. Some lucky buyers will benefit from the sales, while others only get worthless items. A storage auction expert named John Cardoza says that 6 out of 7 units can make money. This could be true, but I'm not open to bidding $1 million on a unit unless a superstar had owned it, and even then, my hunch has to be convincing enough to give in. Number 10. Willem de Kooning Painting. David Killen is another lucky human on this list. This art dealer found 6 paintings by abstract expressionist Willem de Kooning in a New Jersey storage locker. He would sell them for a whopping $2.5 million. He purchased the storage unit for $15,000 because he believed he would get something tangible out of it, and he was right. The unit contained unclaimed works from Orrin Riley, who had passed away in 1986, and his partner Suzanne, who had died in 2009. Riley had worked in a museum before establishing his own conservation business. David purchased the locker and its contents after the property was officially declared abandoned by the New York Attorney General. He said that he found the paintings alongside other minor works from more unpopular artists. The first 2 would be auctioned for $72,000 and $1.2 million respectively, while the others had sold for $31,200 and $690,000. The final painting sold for $270,000 and $240,000. David said the massive sale was a testament that people trusted its legitimacy. The works are believed to be from the 1970s, and this gamble of $15,000 definitely turned out to be worth it. If he didn't know his history, those pieces may have well been underpriced, and he would have lost a lot of money. He was both a historian and an experienced art dealer, and his skills helped him to trace the origin of the pieces and made him a fortune in the process. Talk about a preparation meeting opportunity. Number 9. Sports Illustrated magazine worth $100,000. Alan Hairston had just borrowed $1,200, so you couldn't expect him to squander it. Well, he would gamble with part of the money because he had a gut feeling that he just couldn't ignore. He took $330, hoping to get returns on his investment, and participated in a sports memorabilia auction. He succeeded and received a complete collection of Sports Illustrated, which he thought might be valuable. His wife would remind him that a good portion of that money should go to the rent. He nodded in affirmation but set out to the auction anyways, and convinced his wife to buy units with unknown contents. Sooner than later, she gave in and was fascinated by the idea. Alan was a known gambler but had channeled his efforts at storage auctions, where he purchased some in the past, profiting from their sales. However, the harvest was not bountiful then. When bidding began for the sports memorabilia, other auctioneers didn't seem interested, paving the way for Alan and his wife. He had never purchased a copy of Sports Illustrated in his life, and it would be the first time that he had come so close to it. However, he felt something tell him that there was more to it. They had over 3,000 copies of the magazine dating back to August of 1954 up until the final issue of 2015. They looked like they had come hot off the press. Chris Stone, an editorial director at Sports Illustrated, said he had never heard such a story. Alan and his wife sold the pieces for $100,000. It pays in the end to have a supportive wife. Number 8. Great Dane locked in a storage unit. Now, I understand that people may forget their valuables inside of storage units. They probably wish that they could get them out, but defaulting on your payment means that they're stuck there. No one understands why a Great Dane would be locked in a unit. Battle Creek police began a manhunt for the owner of a dog that they found in a storage unit in Battle Creek. An animal control officer by the name of Mike Ehart arrived at the storage unit after employees had heard a dog barking inside a locked unit. He was shocked and thought that they were joking, but showed up in case there was truth in the claims. He drew more near and could hear the dog bark as though it were in distress. He made a 24-hour notice to the owner to get the animal out of there, as it violated the city's animal ordinance. He then returned after the warning had elapsed, only to still find the dog. That's when he obtained a search warrant and broke the lock. The dog would be taken to the county animal center, where it was then treated, weighing only 20 pounds due to starvation. The animal control officer said the dog's owner may have been evicted from his home and had nowhere else to keep his pet. He hoped that someone would find it and give it a better life. The owner can be charged with a misdemeanor abandonment if he's ever found. Number 7. A Lamborghini. If you're a fan of the Food Network, you probably know who Guy Fieri is and the story of his stolen car. The news would spread like wildfire in mainstream media and social media. The car would later be found in a storage unit. His 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo was stolen from a British motor car distributor's dealership on the morning of March 8, 2011. The thief entered the place the car was parked through a window and drove away with the car, valued at over $200,000. Surveillance video footage showed the thief driving out with the car. Investigators found it in a storage unit in Point Richmond while searching the area. Now, I forgot to mention there's no lucky finder or buyer here, but Guy Fieri, who had his investment returned to him in one piece. When police searched the storage unit, they found Guy's car, alongside of a motorcycle and other items that would aid in the operation of the thief. Guy was grateful at how swift the police were in getting to the root of the issue, and hopefully this serves as a deterrent to other car thieves. You will be caught someday, whether it be today, tomorrow, or beyond. Number 6. Over $1 million worth of drugs. There are many things that are wrong with finding illicit drugs in a storage unit. You can't sell them because you might get caught, and even when you report it to the police, you could still be indicted for something that you know nothing about. So it's a tricky situation to find yourself in. The La Crosse Police Department issued an arrest warrant for a small storage unit in La Crosse after realizing that it was full of illegal drugs. A 26-year-old man with a history of drug and firearm convictions would be arrested and slammed with over a dozen charges. Investigators found a pill press lab with ingredients to make counterfeit Xanax and thousands of USPS boxes. They estimated the street value of the items seized to be over $1 million. That's a whole lot of money to live a comfortable life in a small South American country. Number 5. Elvis Presley Newspaper. Seasoned investors never advise their clients to invest blindly, which could mean the loss of money. Well, we can't always dictate how life happens. This man bought a storage unit for only €600, but was confident that it would yield profit. It was a blind auction as usual, so he didn't know what was inside. When David Hester opened it up, though, he soon realized that it was full of old newspapers. He was sad and didn't really know what to make of it. However, it was too early to judge. He sorted out each item, realizing that they were not standard newspapers, but were from the day the legendary singer Elvis Presley had died in 1977. He guessed that someone had just bought a whole lot of the papers that day to get a different perspective on the news. There were lots of them that he couldn't even count. He wanted to know what the papers were worth, so he visited an expert, Joseph Carrata, who had been collecting memorabilia of the late singer since 1962. Joseph would explain that there were two sets of newspapers. The first was released after a 5-day event to commemorate his death, and it was worth €4. The second one had more significant value and was the game changer. The expert explained that the second group of papers could be sold at €8 each. Hester had 600 of them, 300 on each side, which was a big deal, and he sold the more valuable ones for €12 on eBay and made a whopping $75,000 in the sale. Elvis's death in 1977 was a massive shock to the entertainment industry. He was found unconscious in his home at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. Number 4. Grandma. From the outside, a storage unit doesn't look suspicious, but as they say, looks can be deceiving. Another spoiler before we continue, this is not another money-making scheme or a random finder. The story looked too good to be true, so it's included. Because this family was not meeting their payment and did not need the storage unit, store managers would encourage them to auction off the items inside. One family member rejected the offer, insisting that Grandma was in there. This led to the managers opening it up and finding the skeletal remains of a woman who had died in 1995. She was inside of a blue coffin inside of the unit. Police would confirm the sighting and even recovered her death certificate. The body would later be disposed of through a funeral home in Alabama. Medical examiners would reveal that the woman in the coffin was adequately prepared for burial, but they had wondered why she was never put in the ground. The police suspected that she may have died under suspicious circumstances, which would explain why she was hidden there. Improper disposal is a crime, and someone has to answer for it. Storage managers received frequent prank calls from people who claimed suspicious items were hiding in those units, and when they questioned the veracity of their claims, they ended the call and never called back. They were curious and wanted to lay the matter to rest once and for all. They did so, and what they found had left them dumbfounded. Number 3. A chop shop. By now, you already know that anything is possible when it comes to storage units, from expensive items and bizarre things to stolen ones. This Hartford man was arrested and charged after police uncovered his chop shops. Mitchell German, a teenager, would be charged with felony possession of stolen property and the intent to property damage. Mitchell was notorious for dismantling stolen cars and selling them. Even better still, he used them to build new cars. Before deciding what to use them for, he would keep them in storage units and began using these units for over a year until he was busted. Both of the units were located in Hartford. The investigation began for someone whose car was stolen had posted a picture of the vehicle on his Facebook page. Another user commented that he had seen something similar near a storage unit on Jeffrey Street. Police then followed up with a comment and visited the unit, and that's where they found Honda and Acura parts, alongside numerous other auto parts and engines. The cars were stolen from the Sioux Falls area, but unfortunately they had been dismantled and were unidentifiable. Both of the units were registered under Mitchell's name, as he called it his chop shop. The police emphasized that the chop shop was unrelated to the storage unit burglaries in the area, so it's safe to say there are tens of thieves at large. Number 2. Aretha Franklin's clothing. Aretha Franklin was shocked to hear that some of her belongings would be auctioned. She didn't know which ones that it were, and had been many years since she had seen them, and would go on to admit that they were her former belongings to allay the fears of future buyers. Bags and receipts that were marked with the singer's name were billed to be auctioned off after a group of collectors had found them inside a storage unit. The Queen of Soul told the Detroit News that she had no connection with the sale, but she didn't want the items anymore. She had left them in the storage locker many years previous and had forgotten that they even existed. She made one wish before the sale, though. She wanted to see the items to verify what they were. The collection was believed to have come from her home in Bloomfield that was gutted by a fire in 2002. After the inferno, the unit's owner discovered some hats, handbags, shoes, and glamorous outfits after the purchase. She wore many of those fashionable items in some of her performances. Amongst the auction dresses were a pink bustier and skirt that she wore while on stage with Rod Stewart and Dustin Hoffman, which included a tangerine and gold gown that was worn in the Blues Brothers movie. There's also a denim Blues Brothers crew jacket, which she had worn publicly. The sales location was kept a secret, but the organizers would later reveal that it would be held in Livonia. Let's say that you were asked to pick one of Aretha Franklin's personal effects. Which one would you go for? Number 1. Michael Jordan's recruiting letters. A North Carolina man purchased a storage locker that didn't feature on the popular television reality show, but somehow its content made its way to auction. New Jersey-based auction house Golden Auctions would acquire 2 1980 North Carolina Tar Heels recruiting letters for sale. The first was from Bill Guthridge, and the other was from Dean Smith. Now, Dean Smith had written a letter to Michael Jordan many years ago. The content regarded his college career. At auction, the document opened at $5,000. The letter had since changed ownership twice and may continue to change hands until a final buyer is found. In the storage locker were items from a restaurant that had closed in November of 2003. The letters had Smith's handwriting on them and were deemed legitimate by the authentication company. Guthridge's letter to Jordan dates to February 19th of 1980, one day after he had met him for the first time. He was excited and wrote a letter to acknowledge it, and on the other hand, Smith wrote his on August 12th of 1980 after visiting him and his family at their home in Wilmington, North Carolina. Jordan had received many recruiting letters during his senior year at high school, most of which had been hidden from the public, but in October of 1980, a man wrote to him to wish him luck after he had turned down the Blue Devils' offer. However, he gifted it to the Carolina Basketball Museum in Carolina to be put on display. Thanks for watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one.